British Land Revenue permanent settlement in 1793 by Lord Cornwallis. 90% of British India covered under the permanent settlement, and Jamidar as owner, and fixed revenue collected by Jamidars. Then the Rayatwadi settlement. So in 1820 by Thomas Munro, 51% of British India, peasant Rohit as owner, and revenue conducted directly from peasant and revenue periodically revised. Then the impact on agrarian society and economy. So it increase exploitation and the many more things, and geographic. So geomorphic process and river system. So how the technological activity and erosion and valley formation in the river, and sediment deposition and delta formation, and climate and fluvial activity, and sea level change and coastal processes. Then the soil degradation in India. So extent 97.85 million hectare degraded, and the cause of the soil degradation is the climate change, use of this fertilizer, and erosion, and many constraints of soil. So productivity and efficiency is affected, and we can say the leads to the this malnutrition and so conservation measure of this soil degradation. So sustainable agriculture, improved water management, reforestation, and agroforestry, and controlling pollution. Then the glacial lake outburst, GLOF. So cause is the glacier retreat, seismic activity, and anthropogenic factor, and mitigation strategies of glacial lake outburst. So structural measures like artificial drainage and moraine dam reinforcement, early warning system, and hazard zonal zonation, and risk mapping. Then comes this Indian heritage culture. So Sangam literature. So period 3rd century BCA to 3rd century CE, and significance of this Sangam literature is understanding society. So social structure, Tinai, and caste like classification and status of women and religious practice are described in Sangam literature. Economic aspect. So agrarian and land use, trade and commerce, maritime trade, and urban center and crop production is written. Then the political structure, dynastic rule, the Chera, Chora, and Pandya, and governments and administrative 5-member council is given in the Sangam literature. Then the folk tradition and the cultural heritage is also given in the Sangam literature. Then the what is the difference between Gandhara and Mathura art? So comparison basis on the location, and the Gandhar in Afghanistan and Mathura in India. Period, varied period, and influence. Gandhara is more influenced by the external actors and material used. So the locational basis material is used, and depiction of the god and the idol is more masculine, and more emphasis in Gandhara, and it is Gandhara is influenced by the external factor like Greek and Yunan. And then the Sanchi Stup. So historical significance, it is built by Ashoka, and it is UNESCO recognized site. Artistic and architectural feature. So structural component like Anda, Harmika, and Chhatra, and symbolic depiction like Jatak tells, and any conic symbols are there, and technical and artistic merits in the artistic merit in the Sanchi Stup. Then the contribution of dynasty like Maurya, Shunga, Shatavahana, and Gupta in development of this Stup, Sanchi Stup. Then comes the paper 2, in which the polity and governance. So judicial review. So judicial review. So India versus USA. So Indian judicial review and the USA judicial review, and we have to extend chance of India and National Investigation Agency INA. So established after 26/11 attack and efficacy. So extending countering terrorism, tackling terrorism financing, and expanding international cooperation. Then the impact on federal structure. So stage and coordination, speeder investigation, reduce political interference, conference bypassing, concern bypassing state centralization, and limited state role. Then comes this international relation. So India Maldives relation. So recent fluctuation, geopolitical shift, China influence on Maldives, strategical significance for India. So geopolitical importance, so proximity and maritime trade route, security and defense cooperation, various exercise, infrastructure project, and first responder country, and economic and development cooperations like tourism, trade, and infrastructure, and countering China's influence is needed. Then the measure of strengthening relationships, so bilateral agreement, security and strategic cooperation with the Maldives, and countering China's influence, debt relief, and partnership will be strengthened. Then the India's nuclear doctrine. So key principle: no first use policy, and civilian military diplomacy, and CMD, and massive retaliation if used, and non-use against the non-nuclear state, and relevance in contemporary geopolitics. So balancing deterrence and with disarmament, and managing China-Pakistan nuclear axis. Then the revising NFU, non first use policy. So argument in favor. So it is the credibility of India in the world organization for no first use policy, and argument against, because the Pakistan like state which have many covert operation against India. So no first use policy should be for the good enemy, not the bad enemy like Pakistan. So extending nuclear studies. So modernization, deterrence, and IRV and SLBM are developed, and enhancing strategic communication, and expanding diplomatic engagement regarding nuclear doctrine. Then the India-Africa engagement in 21st century. So strategic shift, historical solidarity to partnership. Then the these dimensions are the geoeconomic. So critical mineral found in Africa, trade and market access, CFTA, and energy and infrastructure, oil and ISM. Then the geopolitical, so strategic and multilateral alignment, voting bloc, and UNSC and AU in G20 by the and maritime and security cooperation IO in Indian Ocean regime. So then the social justice, so ethical consumerism, so role in sustainability, so the influence corporate behavior, and regulatory compliance, and ESG, economic, social, and then circular economy. So what is the ethical consumerism? Means the we have to uh, use certain portion principle whenever we purchase or sell or marketed any consumer good. Then the economy. So labor intensive manufacturing, infrastructure development, and logistics should be developed, and green and sustainable manufacturing are must. Waste to wealth to boost MSME and startup. Then the science and technology. So the air pollution in India. So implementing challenges like NCAP and GRAP. and inevitable monitoring and crops stable burning. Then biodiversity and environment. So climate change on the coastal effect of climate change on coastal biodiversity. So ecological impediments are the sea level rising, ocean acidification, and temperature rising. And socio-economic implication. So threat to livelihood in fishery, force mitigation, the threat to livelihood, fisheries, food, forced migration, health and water security, and the increased vulnerability to disaster. Then the integrated coastal management system. So sustainable coastal development CRZ and restoration of ecosystem, mangrove and coral reef, and infrastructure and disaster reliance sea walls. So coastal regulated zone are there. Then the disaster management. So indigenous knowledge in disaster risk reduction. So early warning system and animal behavior and sustainable infrastructure, steel house and wooden house, and natural resource management, mangrove protection for this indigenous knowledge in disaster risk reduction. So we have to study the animal behavior before the disaster. And internal security, we have the India as a global defense manufacturing hub. So strategical dimension are the enhancing national security, expanding geopolitical influence, strengthening regional presence, and defense for diplomacy. Then the economic dimensions are the surge in to domestic manufacturing and growth of private sector and MSME. Then the technological dimension, so indigenous R&D and innovation development. Then comes the paper four. So ethics, in which the ethical reasoning and decision making, moral distress in public service, financial prudence in public administration and probity, and emotional intelligence in public service, moral courage in public service, like Ashok Khemka and E. Sridharan, and environmental sustainability, like ethical responsibility, ethical governance, corporate accountability, and individual responsibility. Then the environmental clearance process. So balancing environment and ecology, development and ecology. So extending EIA, environment impact assessment studies, enhancing transparency and accountability, integrating SDGs and post clearance monitoring. Then comes the case study, universal admission. So university administration. So ethical dilemma, merit versus influence, possible course of action. So reject request and emphasis on merit, and use discretionary quota for merit and demerit. So this is